Welcome to this advanced video diving into the automated test execution via the Trastronic tool test guide. It explains, for example, how to distribute your test cases across multiple test resources, how to create and edit scheduled test executions, how to automatically abort test executions which did not begin in time, and how to automatically retry failed test executions. So it provides an in-depth insight into the various options when executing a playbook in test guide. To understand this video, you should have basic knowledge about the automated test execution with test guide. For this, just have a look into our two introduction videos. In our other advanced videos, you can learn in detail how to define the contents of a playbook, which are the test source and test dependencies, the playbook steps, and the test resource requirements. So let's assume that you have a fully specified playbook which is ready to be executed on its matching test resources. There are various modes and options for this in test guide, which will be explained in this video. Imagine you have a playbook with many test steps which have a long execution time, and you have multiple test resources which are idle for test execution and which fulfill the test resource requirements of the playbook. You could execute your whole test scope on one of the test resources, but this would take a lot of time and the other matching test resources would be underutilized. So, you want to distribute your test cases across multiple matching test resources. For this use case, you can specify the distribution strategy division into a fixed number of partitions. With this setting, not only one execution task is generated from the playbook, but a user-provided fixed number of execution tasks. The setup and teardown steps are copied to each execution task. The set of test cases are split up into equally sized parts in terms of number of test cases. The generated execution tasks can now run independently on different test resources. This way, you can utilize the number of your test resources and save a lot of time because the tests can run in parallel. Imagine you want to check that all your test resources are equal and can execute a given playbook. That is, you want to run the playbook completely on all test resources which fulfill the playbook's requirements. For this, you can specify the distribution strategy cloning on all currently matching test resources. Another option is the distribution strategy cloning on all specified test resources. Here you can manually provide a fixed list of test resources onto which the playbook setup steps, test cases, and teardown steps will be cloned. For each specified test resource, an execution task is generated which contains all steps of the playbook and can only be executed on this test resource. Anyway, the generated execution tasks will copy the test resource requirements from the original playbook and adds an additional one. So, this can result in execution tasks which are blocked until the specified resource fulfills the requirements. Imagine you have a playbook which contains regression tests and you want to execute this playbook every night. It would be extremely inconvenient if every night someone would have to manually start the playbook execution. So, instead you want to start this execution automatically every night. For this use case, you can specify a recurring playbook execution. You have to provide a cron expression which defines at which times the playbook execution shall be queued. This expression, for example, means that every night at 1:30 execution tasks will be generated from the playbook. You also need to choose a time zone in which the cron expression is evaluated. Additionally, you have to define a time at which the playbook is executed at the earliest. As a final option, you may also prevent a new playbook execution from being queued if the previous one has not been finished yet. That is, all generated execution tasks from the previous scheduled execution run have to be fully executed before a new run of the scheduled execution is able to start. If you want to execute the playbook only once at a future date, you may also specify a delayed one-time execution. You then only have to provide the timestamp at which the playbook is to be executed. You can find all recurring playbook executions and delayed playbook executions of your project on the scheduled execution overview. Here you can see when the executions are triggered next time, and you may edit or delete the scheduled executions. When test execution tasks are queued, it may happen that they have to wait a long time until they are executed at a matching test resource. This could, for example, be the case when you have a large queue with many execution tasks of higher priority, or when the matching test resources do not get idle because there is a long-running execution task or someone blocks the test resource for manual tests. Now imagine that you have a playbook which contains test cases which have to be executed today, because otherwise you're not interested in the test results anymore. So, you don't want to execute the test cases if a certain waiting time has been exceeded. For this use case, you can specify an expiration time for the execution tasks which are generated from the playbook. If the generated execution tasks were not started within the defined number of minutes, they are cancelled before they get executed. This way you can keep track of the number of waiting execution tasks. Sometimes your infrastructure may be unstable, or your playbook may contain unstable setup steps. Then it can be very annoying when the test execution shows errors even though the tested software is actually error-free. So, you want to retry the faulty test executions if they were just unstable. For this use case, you can specify the maximum number of times the generated execution tasks are repeated if they finished with the state error. If this number is exceeded, you can assume the test was not just unstable, but instead truly faulty. There are also some other options when executing playbooks, such as the analysis execution mode, Jira ticket links, or the definition of parameter values. However, in this video I will not go into these setting options in detail. All of these described execution options can be freely combined with one another. Today you learned something about the various options when executing a playbook in test guide. You now know how to distribute your test cases across multiple test resources, how to create and edit scheduled test executions, how to automatically abort test executions which did not begin in time, and how to automatically retry failed test executions. You may also have a look into our other advanced videos about automated test execution with test guide. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the video.